All right, so what I'm going to read is more so with just me thinking about the instability that's been going on for much too long in the Middle East, as a result of Western power forces. And I just want to share my thoughts in regards to that, and my conclusions. And naturally, this is not all of it. This is something that's just maybe a small portion of a much larger problem. Okay, so what brought this to mind? And naturally, I'm going to kind of deviate because it's not going to solely be regarding the Middle East. It's going to go more into other aspects and kind of create connections. But outside of that, that very topic that created the much larger, I feel like a lot of how my brain works is like making connections and then bringing it together and bridging it, like, oh my goodness, how all these issues are just so intertwined, and it's kind of like an onion, like it's just multi-layered. You can't necessarily just say one thing, but this is my perspective. This is more so a small conclusion of a larger conclusion. I feel like a lot of people tackle just the intricacies of history, of the beginning of a lot of things. But once again, like I said, I find a lot of the issues that exist are multi-layered. So I do want to say that one thing that brought this to mind was a Reddit post regarding gentrification that's happening. It's a POC, strictly POC subreddit, and that's something that I also share about on here on YouTube. That where I grew up, it's highly gentrified today. It was a Latino Caribbean community, and I'll just tackle that on here because it's sad. It's really frustrating, given the fact that I do find that a lot of what the U.S. has been attempting to do is perhaps westernize the Middle East, and naturally the Middle East has its own way of life, and that is that conclusion that kind of came to mind, or something, just like a thought. But anyways, let me go or dive into what my thoughts are. So the Middle East and why it may be a constant target. Naturally, this is one of the very small, perhaps, reasons. This is something that I, once again, just kind of summed up, or I feel like it's part of the larger problem, right? Constant target by the U.S. I can't help but wonder if this has much to do with the fact that the Middle East, by and large, adheres to its own way of life. Naturally, there are other religions that exist, so not to minimize that. That's where a lot of people tend to forget Christianity came from the Middle East. It's never a European religion. But when we look at other countries globally, what do we see? The implementation of westernized, less religious, or if religious, right? Christian, Catholicism, things that, a culture, things that kind of point to more assimilation, right? To the Western powers, the Western world. And this makes the Middle East, its religion and culture, perhaps way of life, incompatible with the West, right? Which leads me to also wonder, does the West simply want the East to assimilate, right? I mean, that's essentially what colonization is all about. It's about assimilation. What led me to this thought was a post, and that's something I mentioned as well. I saw on a subreddit where a person of color, I can only assume because it's a strictly POC subreddit, talking about the intense gentrification happening in their neighborhoods. I can confirm this as someone that also grew up in, once again, a Caribbean Latino community that is now becoming predominantly white. Gentrification to me mirrors colonization, or to be completely honest, invasion. Let's be honest, that's something colonizers or those of European descent have been doing. for such a long time now. And I put something, just maybe a bit silly, but like, since they got their hands on damn ships, going to foreign lands, causing instability, oppressing the native people, and then on top of that, like native or indigenous peoples of those lands, right? On top of that, brainwashing and forcing their beliefs and language. I love how Godfrey, the comedian, put it, and this is a little bit like sidetracking, right? Put it at one of the shows that I recently attended. I did put a short. I was debating whether I should put a video of like me just going there, but I was just like, no, let me just show like Godfrey, you know, go check him out. If you haven't, he's amazing. He's always spitting facts. He said, white people will tell you to go back to your country. I hope you hear those, but given the fact that this is native land and territory, someone living in the US, so like, there's that. Oh, okay. But when you go back, you see a bunch of white people, right? This is talking about, you know, people coming from many different places around the world. Like when you go back, you see still a bunch of white people in these predominantly Black and brown countries. And something that just, it was like forever following Black, you know, like the colonizers are forever, right? The white people forever following the Black and brown community. It's really frustrating. Truly, it really is. And to be honest, my very thoughts at that moment is like, these folks never stop invading. You know what it reminded me of? The documentary. Oh my gosh, I should have, because I didn't get the name. I didn't even check for it, but maybe I'll put the name on the bottom. I'll hashtag it, or I'll put it on the description. But in the documentary on Netflix, it was about a European man who literally went to the continent of Africa because he believed in spreading his seed. Which brings me, and this kind of like shifted in terms of my thoughts. It was like, it actually reminded me of the dating scene. As a woman of color, I've noticed incredible disparities. So right now I'm going to like shift in terms of like focus from, you know, it reminds me, as a woman of color, I've noticed an incredible disparity in, and when concerning the dating scene, mind you, I have a partner. So that's that. The amount of colorism, but when I did and was in the dating scene, I can attest to this, and I want to cover this at one point or another. The amount of colorism and self-hate I've seen from my own brothers is only sad, honestly, very sad. And naturally, I can only assume that this also happens, you know, when it concerns like maybe, you know, men of color, maybe they do see and they do experience that colorism. Feel free to share that below in the comment section. But it's deeper than that because of historic oppression. Many systems have failed to allow communities of color to leverage themselves. This leads to insecurity and a feeling of not measuring up, which holds us back from rising, almost like a defeatist mentality that exists within our communities. This, I believe, has stopped us from realizing our full potential. Yes, we will be confronted with white folks and even individuals within our communities who don't want us to succeed, but we must keep moving forward. So I just want to give encouragement to you guys because it's going to take me to something that I've observed and noticed. There's so many things I can talk about. Oh my, everything when it concerns just the world and how a lot of things just affect, you know, so many other things and impact so many other things in life. It's insane but you know, stay hopeful, like they say in Korea. Someone that was in Korea for a while, you know, I don't want to give all of my life out, but I was there for a while. For not too while, but fighting, not just for ourselves, but for future generations, right? We must continue to move forward. And naturally, this is a channel made for communities of color from anywhere and everywhere. So yes, if you've ever felt like the outsider, just know that this is a community that hopefully we can support one another as communities of color, and individuals that may have been and have felt like the other. And this happens right beyond the US, right? It can happen in other westernization where a lot of immigrants and first generation or whatever it may be, it could be many generations later, you feel the effects of racism. But not okay. So I feel like so let me repeat that. So I was essentially saying that this defeatist mentality has stopped us from realizing our full potential. We'll be confronted with white folks and even individuals within our communities who don't want us to succeed, but we must keep moving forward, not just for ourselves, but for our future generations. This is very, very important. I want to speak on this because I see how it's created disparities in our community, especially between men and women who are college educated. And yes, I know school isn't for everyone, but I do believe education is a way up and out of poverty. I can attest to that myself. Many women and men of color want to settle down with someone who is growing academically and professionally, but because there hasn't been a shared or equal push for both genders to pursue higher education, it's caused a real imbalance. Many women are now looking elsewhere, which gives white men a leg up, and I would assume the same goes, right? For men, if you have noticed that or feel that, right? And once more propels the white community forward. So have you noticed how a lot of wealthy women and men of color end up with white partners? That's generational wealth slipping away from us and our communities, right? We need to move intentionally as people of color. And I want to also point out that there's a lot of misogyny in our communities, and that saddens me. It's another reason many people look outside our communities when it comes to relationships. I urge us to reflect deeply on how we can uplift one another. And uplifting means seeing our black and brown brothers and sisters as equal. I talk more about this, and I've been wanting to talk, and oh no, I didn't talk about this yet, and I'm just like, I'm hungry at this point, and I just I am. But I want to actually tackle, and I'll talk about this. I guess I'll make this video. I'll try to make this video hopefully soon. But it's more about like why Latinos and other minority communities voted for Trump. I do believe it's, and I just to give you insight, I believe it's more than just racism and colorism. Naturally, those exist. We already know about that. I speak about that a lot on like previous videos. And naturally, I've seen it, heard it myself, and experienced that as well. And I do find that misogyny is at the forefront, right alongside racism. Naturally, we know that Kamala Harris was the one running, and she's a woman, and she, I feel like much of that support didn't come. So just some insight. That's my thoughts, because I heard these conversations myself. So I do find that misogyny is real in our communities, and therefore has to end. If we want progress, we need to be progress in our own communities. When the world is unkind to us, we must also be kind to one another. And in other words, our brothers and sisters in the communities of color. So I want to say that much, and I want to leave it there. I feel like I tend to go into thoughts and all this stuff and provide insight into this and to that, and probably I lost some of you guys, but I hope you guys got the gist of it when all is said and done. I do want to tackle a lot of things. I wrote it down. I'm like, oh man, I appreciate that a lot of people are out there, because I find that there isn't enough spaces for us, and I wish there was truly a safe space. Let's make that clear, safe space for our communities to gather together, because it's kind of crazy how, you can't even feel like you are safe, because unfortunately the white community and those that adhere to racism and white supremacy, they're there, they're present. And it's sad that we have to feel as communities of color that there's always some sort of risk in a country that talks about freedom, and a country that talks about being safe and having safety. And it's so saddening. that, you know, I have to question these things. Like I was thinking to myself, oh man, like maybe I should, you know, call my local or the local like high school or middle school as someone that's done education for like 10 plus years. And was in the process of being hired. And I spoke about that in previous videos too, at a local school, that all the women of color that I've met, more so like Latinas that I met, mind you, these Latinas lean white, which I can't even imagine what my experience would have been like. But the Latinas that I know and that I've met that went to these schools here didn't ever feel welcomed, and felt outcasted. They didn't have any good experience whatsoever in living in this predominantly white area and community. So yeah, I was thinking to myself, like, I remember having when I attended technical programs in the past when I was young, like there was like women groups. We had groups that literally like just, you were able to talk and gather with people that were like-minded, and it was always a safe space. Oh my gosh. Woo. But when I think about this area, it's like, oh, why would you want to exclude? I can already imagine. And it's like, once again, this is something I just mentioned in my previous video. Why people are always trying to insert themselves in our spaces. They're always trying to hear what we have to say. They're always trying to police, and it's just so annoying. Like, please find your own space. Please, just make your own space. And yeah, if you want to make it exclusive, then we don't care. You know, so it's just like, I just want to feel, and that's the unfortunate part, like those would exist. The white exclusive, they've existed historically here in the US without question. But yet when POCs trying to make their own spaces, trying to have their own spaces for our people to feel safe, to feel comfortable, and for there to not be divisive energy from white individuals trying to cause division and dislike for one another, and that's something I preach so heavily, like Black and brown communities unite, period. Unfortunately within many of our communities, we're still, you know, and I can acknowledge we're still trying to overcome this colonized mindset. Hey, I talk about that as well in my videos. So, you know, feel free to check them all out if you want to. But yeah, it's saddening the state of, and the state that it's always been in. People always say, once upon a time, nothing. That one, it was the same, or worse. So, hey, at least we're talking about it. I hope that more people feel compelled, especially communities of color, feel compelled to talk about these things, because we want to hear your voice. I know I want to hear your voice. I always out here checking for YouTube channels to support and to follow and to be like, oh man, like, once again, go check out Godfrey Comedy. All right, take care. Bye.